Thanks, Brian, and thank you so much for organizing this tonight. And I have to tell you how thrilled I am to have Rob Kane up in the state Senate. You know, he's been up there 2 months already. He's doing a fantastic job for Seymour. He actually represents most of Seymour. I just represent the Great Hill area, so a very small section of Seymour. But I'm from Shelton, so I've been a Valley boy all my life. So places like Seymour have a special place in my heart. And I find it very odd now. I've been in office all of 13 months, and I'm the senior senator for Seymour. So this is my first time holding public office, so it is like drinking from the fire hose. And what Rob said is absolutely right, is that there's a new philosophy that's being adopted on a bipartisan basis as an approach to crime. And that really is for people who commit less violent crimes, for people who are first-time drug offenders, for people who are doing petty theft. The right road for them is rehabilitation. It's to try to help them and reintegrate them into society. But for our worst offenders, for the repeat violent criminals, like the ones who murder the Pettit family, we have to lock them up and throw away the key. And we need to take that approach so that we're not crowding our jails with petty criminals, but saving the room in the jails to lock violent criminals up for a long time. So with that, we passed 2 pieces of legislation in the last year that we hope is going to go towards that. The first is the very first vote that Rob Kane took when he came up in January on our crime reform bill. And what this bill did is a couple things. First, it created a new law of home invasion. So this was directly related, of course, to the Pettit murders, where we said that if you come into a home, if you break into a home and there's a person in there, whether or not there's any violence, you will be guilty of home invasion. And that will carry an automatic 10-year sentence minimum, and you will have to serve 85% of that without a possibility of parole. And that passed on a bipartisan, unanimous basis. We also upped the penalties for burglary at night, saying that, you know what, most people are at home sleeping at night, and if you break into somebody's house at night, whether or not that person's home, you are guilty of what they call a Class B burglary felon, and that carries with it a 5-year minimum and a 25-year maximum. The other important thing that we did with this bill is we reformed the parole system, because one of the things that we found with the Pettit murders is that the parole system failed us. Is that these criminals had committed 6 or 7 crimes before, and they were being let out on parole. Now, they had never murdered before, but they had been accused, or they had been convicted of burglary, of various different felonies, of assault. So they had never committed murder. But you could see from the track record that if they had done their due diligence, they never would have let these people out. So what we did is we created a full-time parole board. Before it was all volunteers. We created a professional full-time parole board and have invested about $4 million creating a computer system that is going to track the records of all parolees. So it will basically, they'll be able, when it's time to have parole, you'll be able to call up all the information on the convict to say what's their prior record, what's their history, how is their time in jail been, and to make an educated decision as to whether to parole somebody or not. The other large piece of legislation that we passed back in '07, but is already making a huge difference, is Jessica's Law. And Jessica's Law deals with pedophilia, which is probably one of the most heinous crimes that a person could possibly commit. And we modeled this after a law in Florida. We're not above stealing a good idea from other states. And what the law says is that if you are convicted of pedophilia in Connecticut, you will automatically be sentenced to 25 years in jail. If you're convicted of a second offense, you will go to jail for 50 years. So we are basically saying that if you're committing these heinous crimes, you better think twice before you go ahead and do it, because you're going to jail for an awfully long time. So with these new laws in place, we're hoping that they serve both as a deterrent to some of these awful crimes, and if it doesn't deter them, then we lock these people away and we don't allow them to commit these crimes again. And, you know, Rob talked about the 3 strikes law. He's absolutely right. A person who rapes 3 different women does not deserve to be free. They deserve to be in jail for the rest of their lives. And there should be no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And the governor's pushing for that, we're pushing for that, and we're hoping that it passes this year. There are about 800 or so of those criminals out there who have 2 strikes, 2 violent crimes, some of which are on parole. we want to say if there is 3 strikes, they go to jail for life. And, you know, just to end up with, you know, the saying that, you know, protection begins at home, we're talking a lot about what government can do to lock up criminals. But a lot of what we're going to be hearing about tonight from the police department and others is some of the common sense things that we can all do in our homes to make sure that the types of violent crime, and there will always be violent criminals out there, that we can make sure that our families are protected. So I just want to say in advance to the police department, Brian, all the folks who are you know, speaking here tonight, thanks for taking the time to educate us, because I'm going to be listening tonight for my family as well to make sure that we're taking the right steps to protect ourselves. So thank you all.